Our headlines. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will take full military control of the Gaza Strip, proposing an eventual handover to non-Hamas Arab governance. The proposition has been approved by the Security Cabinet, but a military chief warned it could endanger hostages and spark a prolonged conflict. Meanwhile, Israel has launched an airstrike in eastern Lebanon, killing at least 5 and wounding 10 others, despite a ceasefire since last November. Meanwhile, the Lebanese cabinet endorses a US plan aiming to restrict all weapons to state control and disarm Hezbollah by the end of the year. President Trump says a future meeting with Vladimir Putin would not be contingent on Putin first meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Kremlin signalled the meeting could take place in the UAE, though final logistics remain under discussion. The US has raised its reward for information leading to Venezuelan President Maduro's arrest to $50 million amid renewed drug trafficking and cartel allegations. The move reflects heightened enforcement and follows prior incremental increases earlier this year. In response to steep 50% US tariffs on Indian and Brazilian goods, Prime Minister Modi and Brazil's President Lula hold a phone call reaffirming their strategic partnership. Lula confirmed a state visit to India in early 2026 amid talks to expand trade, tech and energy ties. Meanwhile, Switzerland's Federal Council held an emergency meeting after US tariffs on Swiss goods soared to 39%, the highest on any developed nation. The Swiss president affirmed willingness to negotiate, but underscored not at any price. A medical aircraft operated by Amref Flying Doctors has crashed in a Nairobi suburb, killing 6 people, including 4 on board and 2 in a home struck by the aircraft. Authorities continue to investigate amid deep community shock. And President Trump has signed a memorandum requiring colleges and universities to submit detailed admissions data, including race, GPA and test scores, to confirm compliance with the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling. Institutions may face federal aid penalties for non-compliance. But we start this hour in the Middle East as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel intends to take full military control of all of Gaza. In an interview with Fox News, Netanyahu said that Israel wanted to hand over the territory to Arab forces that would then govern it. In this interview, the Israeli Prime Minister said that Israel did not want to keep the territory, but rather have a security perimeter. He also said that Israel wanted to hand over the territory to Arab forces that would govern it properly. Netanyahu made the comments ahead of a meeting with a small group of senior ministers to discuss plans for the military to take control of more territory in Gaza. According to reports, Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a proposal from Netanyahu, and the Israeli military will prepare to take control of Gaza City. Reportedly, a ground offensive will also be carried out there. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters in Israel are pushing for the end to a war in a deal that would see the release of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. Let's take a listen to what Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has had to say.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas. And you were in the Gaza Strip today. You met Palestinians who are fighting Hamas because finally they see that they have a future. They can rid themselves of this awful tyranny that not only holds our hostages, but holds 2 million Palestinians in Gaza hostage. That's got to end.
Are you saying today that you will take control of the entire 26-mile Gaza Strip, as it was 20 years ago to this month in 2005?
Well, we don't want to keep it. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. We don't want to be there as a governing body. We want to hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly without threatening us.
Well, joining us to discuss this latest developments in a difficult situation that has almost lasted 2 years now, Shruti Dasgupta, a Middle East researcher, joining us live from New Delhi. Shruti, thank you for your time as always. Let's look at this confirmation now from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel does intend to take full military control of Gaza. Questions being raised with protests around hostages, looking for an end to the war. Is Israel more divided than ever over this situation?
Greetings. Thank you so much for inviting me. And you're completely right in saying that Israel is divided. The IDF themselves has said that such a ground offensive, as well as an outright declaration of occupation, even for a short while, would risk the lives of the remaining hostages and put Hamas in a corner, which out of which maybe Hamas will not survive, but neither will the hostages. So the people of Israel want their people first, Israelis first. They want the hostages out. And Netanyahu is unable to secure a ceasefire, and the Hamas is unable to come to the talking table with clean intent. And this is exactly what has resulted in the pause since, I think, about 2 or 3 months ago, where the 6 weeks pause was then violated. So there has been no exchange of hostages up till now, and the Gazans are being held hostage in the name of aid by Hamas and Israel. And we find ourselves at a situation where now Israel is ready to walk into the military force, and the IDF themselves are saying that the hostages will be at risk and probably not survive such an offensive.
Yes, Shruti, we're just showing a headline on screen. Netanyahu saying we don't want to keep Gaza. Do you believe him?
I don't believe him. I think keeping Gaza would be would send a very bad message across the world and would invite sanctions and condemnations more than what Israel is already facing or is yet to face. And beyond that, Jews and Israelis are facing a lot of flack, hate across the world. You are seeing people confront Jews on the streets. You're seeing people harass them for their faith just because of this Gaza conflict. So if he does keep control, governmental control, or even military control of that region, people, and Jews specifically across the world, would face a lot of negative emotions and aggressions of people who do support Hamas or even Palestine, or the cause of Palestine. So he will probably not keep control. As he said, he's going to give it back to the Arab forces. But who are the Arab forces? The Qataris, who support the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt itself is very pliant towards the IDF. So in a way, if they hand it over to Egypt, the IDF and Israel would be controlling it indirectly. Until unless the US and Saudi, which were stepped into this particular equation, I would find it difficult to believe which Arab forces there, because Qatar as a Arab force would not be good news for Gaza or even Israel.
Yeah, Shruti, do stay with us, because we're now going to move on and look at a reaction to this. And Hamas has accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of sacrificing the Israeli hostages held in Gaza after the Israeli government approved the proposal expanding Israel's Gaza offensive. Hamas also say that Netanyahu's remark that Israel intends to take military control of all of Gaza constituted a coup amid the ongoing Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal negotiations. Just to clarify, there is currently no ceasefire in Gaza. A previous ceasefire was in play until March. They have also said that they will treat any force formed to govern Gaza as an occupying force linked to Israel, after the Israeli PM said that Israel wanted to hand the territory over to Arab forces. Well, Shruti, thank you for once again staying with us. The Hamas response there, clear, obviously talking about these hostages. The Israeli military operation since the end of that earlier ceasefire has seen limited to no releases of hostages. The only release that's been there is one that was brokered by the US. Is this an admission that the operation following that ceasefire from the IDF was a failure?
This is a failure of the operation. There is not going to be an exchange of hostages now anymore after this particular threat, and that should be obvious to anybody who's listening to this news. Whoever is remaining would probably be on the brink of death, if not already dead. And it is really sad that Netanyahu is ready to sacrifice his own people to attain an end to Hamas. And this is going to hurt the Israeli people as well. Now, beyond that, I would like to bring the attention to the fact that they've said any other force, even if it is not the IDF themselves, any other force will be treated as an occupying force. And if you've heard any of the other rhetorics that are going around under the name of the Palestinian flag, it is called the Global Intifada. That basically means that they want to take jihad all over the world. That means any force, even if it is US, is going to face internal pressures and aggressions of that particular people of that particular sympathy, as well as continued aggression to whoever is occupying Gaza at that particular time. So this shows that if Israel walks into Gaza completely taking over, it's already, I think, in control of 75% of Gaza Strip, and only about 25% of it is not in control. And that 25%, if it continues to take over that, then whoever is going to be there is going to face continued aggression from whoever is the terrorist force there. So even if you manage to wipe out Hamas, you will face Hezbollah, you will face a new force, you will face somebody else under another banner, probably not Hamas banner. So anybody walking into Gaza right now is going to be the aggressor and is not going to be looked at as the peaceful force or a force that is going to give control back to Gazans at some point of time. So it is a very, very loaded statement that Hamas has put out, and it is a warning to the world that if we burn, so will you, no matter whether you share our borders and our shores. So that is something that people need to look at very carefully. Whether they bow down to Hamas or not, and their warning is something that they need to understand, that they have probably fed a monster through their protests that they cannot control any longer.
Shruti Dasgupta, as always, thank you ever so much for your time and your excellent insight on that topic. We shift away from Gaza now, but stay in the Middle East, and Lebanon has said that an Israeli strike on the country's east has killed at least 5 people. The Lebanese Health Ministry said in a statement that the Israeli strike on Masna Road resulted in a preliminary toll of 5 deaths and 10 injuries. The state-run national news agency also reported that the strike hit a vehicle in the area near a border crossing with Syria. The reported strike came as Lebanon's government was discussing Hezbollah's disarmament. Although a ceasefire was reached last November, according to reports, Israel has conducted near daily attacks in southern Lebanon, claiming to target Hezbollah's activities. It has threatened that it will continue to do so until the Lebanese group is disarmed. Moving to geopolitics now, and Russia and India have stressed their commitment to a strategic partnership in bilateral security talks in Moscow. This comes as National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval, was in Moscow for a bilateral meeting. The visit comes just a day after US President Donald Trump announced higher tariffs on imports from India because of its purchases of Russian oil. While the details of the discussion have not yet been made public, NSA Ajit Doval has confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin will be visiting India soon and that the dates are being finalised. Doval, in his statement, also reiterated the strong strategic partnership with Russia. Here is what he said.
You have very rightly mentioned, Excellency, that we have got a very special relationship, a long relationship, and we highly value our strategic partnership. We have had high-level engagements, and these high-level engagements have contributed very substantially. We are very excited and delighted to learn about the visit of His Excellency, the President of Russia, President Putin, to India. I think that the dates are almost finalized now.
Well, joining us to discuss this bilateral meeting and these relations, Rabinder Sachdev, an international affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Rabinder, thank you for joining us. How significant are these bilateral relations between India and Russia in the face of continued US tariff action?
Thank you. I think they have become extremely important and in a way pivotal to India's geopolitical, relationships, including with the United States. Russia-India relations are, I think, undergoing a thorough recalculus, re-understanding. Both countries are revisiting the matter. Russia had been a little bit drifting away from India also, by the way, and getting closer to China, which it still is. But let's say the meeting of in Moscow with our NSA Dole and Putin and the statement is it's a very smart soundbite that we are listening to. When Ajit Doval says that, we are looking forward to a visit by Putin to India and dates are finalized, right? Now, what's happening is that a lot of the media and analysis are thinking that it's going to be the end of this month, maybe, or very soon Putin is coming to India. That lends a certain urgency. Whereas apparently the dates are somewhere towards the end of the year, right? But by leaving it open, he's saying that dates are fixed. The assumption is that the date could be very anytime sooner. So that's optopolitics playing out. But India is standing firm, and I think both nations are deepening their discussions on energy, on defense, and even other strategic, and also coordination, maybe to some extent, at the SCO, which is upcoming, and with the BRICS. So I think a range of discussions being held, very important in these times. And when also Russia has to take a decision. So what discussions happen between India and Russia, Russia gets some little, perhaps, I think, emboldened by it more. And therefore, Russia negotiates even harder with the United States. You see, that's another byproduct of these meetings.
Yes, absolutely. Rabinder Sachdev, you will be staying with us as we now move on, but continue to look at US tariff action, with the Swiss government saying that it would pursue more talks with the United States to seal a deal on tariffs. This comes after Switzerland officials met with the US negotiators in Washington to stop the 39% tariff blow by Trump. However, the tariff proposal by Switzerland has been rejected by the US. The government held an emergency meeting after President Karin Keller-Sutter and Economy Minister Guy Parmelin returned from the meeting, but they have said that Switzerland does not plan to retaliate for now. She has further said that any retaliatory measures would also have financial consequences for the Swiss economy. Let's listen in.
Es ist jetzt so, dass wir diese Verhandlungen fortführen möchten. Wir möchten auch ein geregeltes Verhältnis mit den Vereinigten Staaten. Das ist ein wichtiger Handelspartner. Aber wir haben heute auch gesagt, nicht zu jedem Preis. Also wenn man dann sehr viel aufwenden muss und trotzdem noch einen hohen Zoll hat, dann muss man sich überlegen, ob man das will.
Well, Rabinder, thank you for staying with us. We have, of course, on this programme over recent days discussed this potential deal with Switzerland. But I want to specifically look at the fact now that Switzerland say they aren't going to react and aren't going to respond with retaliatory tariffs, at least for now. Do you think this is a win for Trump, given the fact that it's not seeing any bounce back to the US?
Yeah, I mean, net of net, Trump is scoring wins, no matter what, global opinion may say, governments may say. He is establishing higher tariff rates. He is pulling in more money by compulsion, whichever way. The European Union, 15% tariffs, but promised to invest $1.35 billion within 3 years on oil, gas, and European investments in the US. Japan doing the same, Taiwan doing the same. Of the ones who made a deal. Okay, so with respect to Switzerland, yeah, sure. I mean, they've been hit by 39%, which is, of course, they were all luxury diamonds and watches, etc. By the way, this is leading to a very interesting, opinion building up in Switzerland. There are voices in Switzerland who say that Switzerland should join the EU. Switzerland is not part of the EU. EU has a 15% tariff. So Switzerland, there are discussions ongoing by the opposition on some that why don't we join the EU, give up our proverbial independence. But that aside, Switzerland, I think they would have to maybe live with it or maybe continue the discussions and tariffs come down somewhat. They promise to invest. Yeah, what it could mean is that they could promise to invest in some way, shape, or form, $50 billion or $100 billion in the US economy. And then Trump would say, okay, fine, your tariffs down to 20%. That's what they could do. They might be forced to do. They might not retaliate, because what can they do by retaliating? Much.
Yes, Rabinder, absolutely. Please do stay with us once again. Conversations around trade are going on across the world, across continents. And this comes as Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a telephone call from Brazil and the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The two leaders reportedly exchanged views on various regional and global issues of mutual interest. The two also reiterated their commitment to take the strategic partnership to new heights. In his post on X, in his telephone conversation with the Brazilian president, PM Modi said that the countries are committed to deepening trade, energy, tech and defence partnership. The call took place a day after the Brazilian president said that he will not call US President Donald Trump to negotiate with him over tariffs, but will invite him to the COP. He had said that he would call PM Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping instead. Well, thank you, Rabinder, for staying with us once again. We're just going to keep this brief because we are shorter on time. But do you think that, obviously, two BRICS nations coming together, both facing tariffs at 50%, is Trump's tariff action potentially alienating the US and potentially leading to strengthen ties with other key US trading partners that might weaken the US in the long run?
Of course it is doing that. What the US calculates is that, okay, let others come together, but this is the last he-go push, and I'll make sure that I'm the dominant player ever. These emerging clusters have to be slammed down. That's what the US wants. So it's pushing other nations to, even though they want to keep one leg with America and American partnerships and trade and all, but all of the nations are very actively and urgently looking and seeking other connecting nodes, exchanges, networks, and such.
Yes, Rabinder, thank you ever so much for joining us on all three of those talking points. Lots to discuss surrounding tariffs, and we will continue to do so here at NewsX World. Moving on now, and in a major diplomatic move, US President Donald Trump is set to host the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan at the White House today for the signing of a historic peace framework. The agreement aims to establish a concrete pathway to peace between the two nations, long at odds over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. A central feature of the deal is the creation of a strategic transit corridor through Armenia, connecting Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan enclave. In a key provision, Armenia will grant the United States exclusive development rights to the corridor, which will be called the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, also known as the TRIP, operated under Armenian law. The US will sublease the land to a consortium for infrastructure and management. Officials say the corridor will help unlock the region's economic potential and reduce the risk of further hostilities. The two leaders will also sign documents calling for the dissolution of the Minsk Group, which has mediated the conflict since 1992. Well, joining us to discuss the significance of this signing today, Jim Rice, Professor of International Law, joining us from Vigan in the Philippines. Jim, as always, such a pleasure to have you on the programme. Could you provide some context on this conflict? Of course, it's been raging for some time, but many people may not know quite how significant this is between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Well, again, this is a conflict that emerged after the breakup of the former Soviet Union, and it seems to have emerged during the 1980s as a kind of ethnic and sectarian conflict. And in terms of the military size of the military force, it seems that the Azerbaijanis are the stronger force. Armenia is the weaker. Obviously, they are interested in doing this deal. I must confess, this term, the Trump corridor, is a new term to me. Again, I would wish all of the parties the best in terms of, the politics and their economic relations going forward. But quite frankly, it seems to me that this is yet another example where Trump is trying to aggrandize himself and cast himself as the peacemaker, and at the same time secure some kind of economic benefits from the United States interests.
Jim Rice, unfortunately we don't have any further time on this topic, but you will be staying with us as we remain in North America, as 2 state troopers were reportedly shot yesterday in Pennsylvania as they were responding to a 911 call. The shooting happened around 40 miles north of Scranton. The troopers were identified as Joseph Perachinski and William Jenkins. Let's listen to the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner about what unfolded on the ground.
The troopers made it out of their vehicle and they were ambushed from a very good distance away. I don't want to quantify that pending further investigation, but they were ambushed by several rounds of rifle fire from a position of tactical superiority. Trooper Perashinsky was shot twice in the chest/torso area. Trooper Jenkins was shot twice as well, once in each arm. Despite being very severely wounded, Trooper Perachinski was able to tourniquet both arms of Trooper Jenkins with some further assistance, and their cars where they had arrived and gotten out of were also riddled with gunfire.
Well, reports also suggest that both police officers are recovering in the hospital. They have sustained serious injuries but are now believed to be in a stable condition. The State Police Commissioner also mentioned that the suspect was armed with a rifle and refused to comply with commands and was shot dead at the scene. As of now, it is not yet clear what the 911 call was about or why the suspect opened fire. Well, we welcome back Jim Rice. Thank you ever so much for staying with us. Further reports of shooting, this time 2 state troopers being hit, and of course the suspect being shot dead. Is this going to raise any further questions, do you think, about gun laws in the United States? It's something which is somewhat more common, but obviously when law enforcement are put in danger doing their jobs, does that raise any further questions?
Well, again, first of all, I'd like to express my relief at the news that the officers seem to have not been killed. They're recovering. And the problem, again, in America is that there's a very, very strong political movement, organization in form of the National Rifle Association, and many politicians who support them, who consistently refuse to enact any kind of meaningful gun reform, despite the fact that most American citizens are in favor of universal background checks. Or in my case, my argument would be that assault rifles, and again, we need to look at the type of weapon used in this assault, that assault rifles be entirely banned in the United States.
Jim Rice, as always, thank you so much for providing insights on both of those topics. And that is all we have time for now, but we will be back soon with more of your latest international news. Thank you.